We're good? Okay, I'm going to call the meeting of the Tainter Lake Rehabilitation District to order. It is 5 o'clock. Let the record show that everybody is in attendance. First of all, what committee meeting minutes are we approving?
We have a regular meeting from last month and then the Water Quality Committee minutes from December 2nd.
Okay. So I will entertain a motion for the approval of the agenda and the regular meeting minutes of 11/21/24 and the December committee meeting of the Water Quality Committee.
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to approve the agenda, the minutes of the regular meeting and the committee meeting minutes. Is there any other discussion? The only thing that I would add, Chuck, is to the minutes is to add who was present for the minutes. So if there's no other discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. There is no educational or informational speaker for this month. So we're going to move on. Recognition of visitors and visitor comments. Bob, seeing that you're the only visitor here, do you have any comments? Right. No, the visitors, just the committee members. No comment? Okay. We'll move on then. Commissioner communication. Does anybody have any communication that they would like to share with the rest of the board?
I can share a couple things. The other day, Chuck, Al, and I met with Casey O'Lally, who's DNR fish biologist for our area, to discuss our two projects for this summer, a carp bounty and our fish stocking. We are going to call it a carp bounty, kind of for legal reasons, so we don't have to get a permit. And we will only pay for carp because those are the fish that are harmful to the water. She gave us the name of a gentleman that can help set up the tournament. Our plans are to try to set up a kiosk of some type, a trail cam, and maybe even a scannable code.
QR code.
QR code, thank you. So people can check in with their fish and we won't need to be present. So that part was really helpful. It was great that she was able to give us that information. As far as our fish stocking program, what we are going to shift to is planting muskie rather than walleye and northern. Muskie is something that we have good habitat for. The price is much more, $13.50 to $14 a fish, but we're going to try to take on a couple of partners, hopefully to get some more money into the project so we can stock more muskie while we're doing it. The stocking will take place probably the second week in September. The fish will be delivered. I contacted the only fish farm in the state of Wisconsin that grows muskie, And, the DNR uses them regularly. So, I'm quite confident that we will get what we're asking for. So, that's about it on that. And then, as I said, we're trying to take on a couple of partners to get some more money into that project. So, with a little luck, we will be able to do that. I think that's it. Did I miss anything, Chuck or Al?
Was that Gowan again, the company?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Yeah, and the reason why she recommended muskie as opposed to walleye, because we had originally wanted to do walleye, is that she cautioned us on stocking walleye because if you introduce walleye stocking program on top of a fish that's already reproducing, you can actually retard the reproduction of that. So it's a fish that eats other fish. And so it's still a predator fish, whether it's a walleye or a muskie. The other thing is, one of the things that Tom hit upon was, we are going to be looking for partners to, partner, with, muskie. Obviously, they're a little more expensive. She recommended a stocking rate of one fish per acre. So that's about 19 grand a year to stock. Well, 19 grand a stocking, and they recommend stocking every other year. So, so we're gonna be looking for, if we want to stock at the rate of one fish per acre. If not, there are other groups out there, and when I attended the Alliance, Sportsman Alliance meeting, there was somebody that said that they're a part of a group that was actually trying to do the same thing. So we'll partner with it, and if it's a half a fish an acre, then that's what it is. But she was helpful. She steered us in the right direction, and so that meeting went well. Did you have a question? You looked like you were gonna have a question.
I did, thanks. Thank you for meeting with her. I just was curious, a little more detail about her comments and thoughts of muskie versus walleye or northern, because I'm concerned that owners, residents may be upset that they're not getting their fish versus a muskie or something.
Right. And that doesn't mean that we have to always do that as a part of a program, but that was what. And she, if you remember correctly, she had identified muskie as the species of fish that was struggling with the reproduction, a natural reproduction.
Good, thank you very much.
And I also asked her the question, these fish will reproduce, because
Yep.
when we were at the Lakes Conference, that guy was talking to you about, sterile fish and everything, and that's when she went into the whole thing about, if you layer too many, a stock fish on top of natural reproducing, it's not that they're sterile. It's, because there's too much competition. And the other thing is that if you happen to have a batch of fish that are all male or all female, you don't get the right balance. So that's what we found out about that.
Based on my experience, there's more than enough walleye on this lake. So,
That's what she said.
yeah,
Right.
Northern probably too.
I'm not catching any northern, but I was catching, 3 walleyes a day or more. So, all fall.
Good. Good. Other, commissioner communication.
I let you know, Al, but I had a conversation with Tyler Meesalk, with the Wisconsin DNR. He's the Water Resources Management Specialist for our region out of the Eau Claire office. He's willing to come and present to be a guest speaker on February 20th, I believe, would be our meeting. So he works hand in hand with Alex Smith and will be pretty involved with our aquatic plant harvesting permitting. But he's involved with invasive species. I had a long conversation about impoundment drawdowns with them. So if you have any things that you might want to bring forward to him prior to him meeting, maybe let me know and I can communicate that to him.
His spelling of his last name is
Mesalk.
A-L-K.
First name was
Tyler. His title is what?
He's the Water Resources Management Specialist for the Wisconsin DNR of our whole area. Barron, Buffalo, Chippewa, Clark, Dunn, Eau Claire, Jackson, Marathon, Pepin, Pierce, Polk, Portage, Rusk, St. Croix, Taylor, Trempealeau, and Wood counties.
water, what?
Water Management Resources Management Specialist. That's a title.
So he's pretty involved. He's got a lot of knowledge on invasive species as well. So I'm sure if people have questions about that or our zebra mussel issue, I think he'd have a lot to say about that as well. So,
Is it okay if I just put it down as invasives? And
Yeah,
just leave it go at that?
yeah. And he said he'd be open to just kind of a question and answer format.
Good.
I think he'd be a good guest speaker for us.
Okay, good, good. Other communications? The last one I have is I met with Dr. Tina Lee to discuss some potential summer projects for the REU. Unfortunately, they don't think they're gonna get the REU money this year. They're waiting to see with the changeover in Washington. They don't have a clue as to how that's gonna roll out. But I still gave her three budget ideas, or not project ideas, for I was really aiming at what the REU projects, but and I'll explain a little bit more in the future or in a second here, but the three ideas that I threw out at her was from conversations that we had is who is using the lake? You know, on a given Saturday, who's out there? You know, is it residents? Is it non-residents? Who uses the lake? The other one is monitoring sedimentation. One of the sediment goals of the sediment committee is to start monitoring the delta and to see what that is. And I thought it would be kind of nice if that group, especially if there's Dr. what's his name? Gillum is part of that, and he's in stream restoration. Well, that's just the stream entering into the lake. If they could begin the framework for what that monitoring process would look like. I wouldn't expect them to monitor it as much as it would be to provide the data and the methodology and how that's going to take place so that then we could do it as an ongoing basis through our organization. The other idea I threw out there, and this is one that Tina and I have talked about in the past, is that Stout has this whole Clear Lake function within the university, and they have all these research projects. But to get to that research, it's kind of an arduous process. And so what I would like, or what I suggested, and of course, she started on this kind of, and she understands this from other conversations we have, but it would be nice to have a repository or an electronic library so that you could go to one place And then you'd have a listing of all the research that they have or access to. And that we could utilize that research without having to essentially do 5 hours worth of research to come up with 2 or 3 papers. So those were the 3 ideas. Of course, we also talked about if they don't have the REU program this summer, if there was a way that we could fund maybe a smaller project. Now, if we fund the smaller project, they have a standard, I think it's for student work, it's $15 an hour. So she's gonna give me a proposal on that after Christmas. But that's just something, what I wanted to do is really get on the front end of their research that was going on. And then that, so that we can take their research and actually turn it into either action or a part of our justification for grant writing or whatever that is, that we have access to that information. So that was helpful and we had that discussion today. And so that's kind of where I left it. But it was a good conversation. So
Al, does she work on limnology or is she a biologist or how is she all related to
she's a social scientist. So she works out of the, oh God, they have like a title that's 5. She's actually an anthropologist, but she does the research on the social impacts of and you remember Raph, what was his first name?
Zach.
What?
Zach.
Zach Raff. He was a part of that program too, but he did the economics of it. There's another group, the Bill James, it's not Bill James anymore. It's, 2 younger guys that are running that program. But they're all under the heading of a kind of a community-based research stuff, that they do. So, it's kind of weird because Tina teaches, but like the Bill James, the CLEAR, they call it CLEAR, it's CLRR. That lab, they don't teach, they just do research for people and studies and things like that. So, and I don't know that there's actually a limnology department, but there's people with limnology backgrounds.
There's a spot on their website that says limnology, but it's all William Jane's old work.
Right.
No new guys, nothing.
Yeah, well, he's retiring and these new guys are kind of taking it over. And so when he finally pulls the pin, from what Tina told me today, when he finally retires, then I think then that program will continue on. And I don't know who's gonna be the head of it, but so that's what I found out today. Okay, anything else? Moving on. Treasurer's report.
Okay, currently we have $10,704.58 in the checking account and $1,133.32 in the savings account. Since the last meeting, we did put in, basically our final tax levy checks from the townships. And we paid for insurance and paid a bill to Colfax Messenger. So not a lot of activity, but it was good to get that, those last loose ends of the 2023 tax levy put in the account.
Just in time to get our 2024.
Bingo, helping with cash flow.
Grant, what was the savings amount, please?
$1,133.32.
Thank you very much.
And I put in for, we haven't gotten anything on the surface water grant, but I put in to get I think we get 60% of that grant up front, and she said she was gonna put in the paperwork for it, but took her 2 weeks to get back to me on a phone call, so I'm not expecting it to be there real quick. Just so that you know. But that should be another couple thousand that we get from the state. That should be coming. Okay, do I have a motion to accept the treasurer's report?
Motion to accept.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to accept the treasurer's report. Is there any other discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
Who's the second?
Jim,
Oh, sorry, Jim.
committee reports, voting and safety. Anything to report, Jim?
Yes, we met, Monday at Jake's. And the, ordinance process is moving, right along. The town of Tainter is being very methodical about it, which is good. She's making sure, i's are dotted and t's are crossed. Being as such, this will be news to Bob, who was at our committee meeting Monday. We were originally gonna be on the at the town meeting in January for both the repeal of the existing ordinance and the granting of authority for the Lake District to have an ordinance. However, statutorily, it didn't meet the 30-day because it doesn't count like the day it was or day it was submitted. So she was at 29 days. So she's a stickler. So we'll be on the February agenda. And having this has been a lot of process, which is why I don't want a committee that is just ordinances that I am part of. Because it's been a lot of meetings with an attorney and all of that stuff. So and we're doing something that's uncharted water, to coin a term, for a lake district, which is to take over an ordinance of another municipality. Other lake districts have ordinances and other things, but they haven't taken over someone else's existing, so to speak, or require them to appeal it. I mean, essentially, we're not taking it over. We're writing our own. It's based on theirs. So there's not a lot of documentation for it. So because the ordinance is with the towns of Tainter and Menominee, Tainter again has to repeal it first and grant us the authority, then the town of Menominee needs to sign off on it. So that'll happen at the February meeting because there's plenty of time to notice for that. And then we'll communicate with the town of Menominee, the language and everything to do that. And then we kind of go forward from there. Other than that, we're going to need to submit applications with the DNR to have these essentially 3 enforcement zones that are the no wake zones or slow no wake zones that exist now. The township submitted those applications. We will need to submit our own. And also on top of that, our intrepid in a leader in many ways, Pete Heimdall turned in his resignation for our committee, dealing with some health issues. So our committee's down to 3 people at this point. We've got a couple of people that are possibly interested in joining, but it would be nice to have more than 3 of us making decisions and stuff. So, because we got to tackle Bob when he gets out of line, and we need more than just 2 of us that do that. So, Jerry,
Board member?
huh?
You want another board member?
If you want to,
Yeah.
okay. I mean, we generally we've been meeting on either Mondays or Wednesdays at 5.
Both bad times.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's all right. We've got some other possible prospects as far as,
Well, I don't want to be a
No,
But-
not a burden, so. But that seems to be not only the time when we can meet, because most of the people on the committee can almost meet anytime. But the feedback, we generally, this was a rare meeting in that we didn't have anybody attend. We usually have anywhere from like 5 to 10 people that are at the meetings that show up. So we tried to do an earlier time at 3. That didn't go over very well. So we've now been doing it at 5. We had people complain this time that we were meeting on a Monday at 5 because that conflicted with the business after hours. Not that the people who attended business after hours would have attended our meeting, but they could have, I guess. So next week we're meeting back on a Wednesday.
Well, in the winter, if I was to attend, it would be a Tuesday or Thursday night at 5. I would be available.
Okay.
Monday, Wednesday. no.
We've looked at Tuesdays, but Tuesdays we would need to look, we've done it at the Pioneer before. Pioneer's gotten really loud. And we explored maybe Elk Point, but there'd probably be the same situation. I don't know, when Peter gets the dining room done, maybe he'll actually have openings on Tuesdays, or give us the key, let us run the show from there. So, I mean, personally, it's nice having the meetings at Jake's because you can get a little beverage and have some steak bites. So,
Sounds good.
Okay.
Can I add something to Jim's? At the Tainter town meeting last week, they announced that there would be a public hearing on the ordinance January 9th. And it'll just be at the regular meeting time. It will be 7 o'clock.
and they will announce probably at that meeting that the actual public hearing will be in February. Because that's the one that is not enough notice.
Makes sense.
She wanted it's the statutes say 30 days. Technically, it was 29 when she did it, the notice. I actually had suggested to her a couple weeks ago that she move it to February. She thought she was okay, and she's not, so.
Oh, you're right. It was December 12th, so.
Mhm.
Okay.
So I don't know what they're gonna announce at this meeting, but they'll probably announce that they'll do it in February, so.
Sedimentation. Tom?
Sedimentation, okay, so I met,
Excuse me. I'm sorry, Jim. I'm assuming you were done.
Yes.
Okay. I didn't mean to be short or.
I
moving
met,
things along.
I met with representatives from Dunn County, 2 from the DNR and 2 from the NRCS via Zoom. And we discussed a plan to move forward on the Stewart property. We need to be referring to the property by Stewart rather than by Dobbs Landing, because the Alliance does not want to be involved with that name. So we should refer to it as a Stewart property. And what we agreed upon at that time was that Chase Cummings would contact an engineering company that the county has worked with in the past and is comfortable with for an estimate on engineering charges, engineering costs, I should say, for the Stewart property. And we will meet again in February to further discuss and plan a grant writing project. During that meeting, I offered our help pretty much in any way we could. I mentioned that we want to have a partnership, so we want to be involved. And what we're looking for moving forward, and we don't have to discuss that, well, we can't discuss it tonight, but we'll have a decision. We'll know what a good idea of the cost will be in February. And shortly after that, I would like to discuss if the Lake District would like to help with some of the engineering costs. I have a dollar figure in mind. It's not anything that is out of touch by any means. But the NRCS, the DNR, the county and us would be involved. So we can discuss that more when we know more about it. Go ahead.
Can you
Jerry.
tell me what the engineering is to do on the Stewart property?
Well,
Hold up the bank or?
yeah, to keep it from eroding.
Okay.
That's the overall goal.
Okay.
How they go about that,
Yeah,
I
right,
don't know.
right.
Um,
But the objective is to
yes,
keep it
these
from
guys
coming in
have
the
worked
river.
on projects like this. One just east of Downsville for a home that was up on the bluff up there. So they should have a pretty good idea of costs.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
I had hoped at this meeting to address the two properties, but they decided to split it out and I wasn't gonna push. Because if we can get one done at a time, that's good. That's all I need.
What's the other?
Pardon me?
What's the other property?
The other one is called the Steyer Bend. It's the property just adjacent to the wastewater treatment plant in Colfax. That's about 1,000 feet long. And I've been up on that site, I think 3 times and needs a little work.
Yeah.
So
Well,
These,
go ahead.
questions, go ahead. Adam.
these sites are, I think if you look at them, you can see they're a big concern, but like, is there any perspective of the idea of proportionally of the sediment coming in compared to those sites being a contributor? And what
Yes.
makes me question that is the Hay River, is filling in just as fast, and is there some big massive erosion site on the Hay River? Are these, I mean, I see, like, looking at these projects as they're important, but proportionally, are they that significant?
No, well, first of all, the report that we have used is specific to the red cedar.
Mhm.
To the best of my knowledge, no one's done a report on the Hay River. The amount of erosion that winds up with sediment in the delta of Lake Tainter from the Stewart project alone, that's the leader, and the Steyer Bend project is the second on the river. There's like 60 sites almost
Right.
that erode. The Stewart property alone dumps 9,000 cubic yards of sand into the river each year. Now, that's a big number, but to put it in perspective, if you loaded 600 of the county's big dump trucks, that's what it amounts
Yeah.
to.
One thing that's kind of interesting, if you go on a site called Wisconsin Historical Aerial Image Finder, and it's overhead views of the
Mhm.
state from 1938. And that erosion site's there in 1938, so that thing's been feeding Tainter Lake for a long time.
The good news on this property is that the owner is willing to do some cost sharing. Let's see what the costs are first, but
How many total properties was there? 60?
there's 57 or 58 or something like that. As far as I'm concerned, if we can hit the number one and the number two,
You bet.
And their
In my
proximity
lifetime,
to the
Proximity
lake.
to the lake.
yes,
they're
exactly.
closer.
They talked about another project north of Colfax on the County M Bridge. I'm like, well, that's probably a good project too, but it might be good for
Someone else.
to work on, yeah.
Hey, Tom, that was, I think why it got brought up, it was an old thing that the TMLIA was working on with the Corps engineers and the county. And they had like $600,000 seeded to that and had everything set up, ready to go, but the county highway department backed out.
Okay.
I heard that story too.
What's that?
I heard that story as well.
Did you? Okay.
What happened, what I'm proposing that we do, is put this on January's agenda, the Stewart Property and Engineering Study. Number one, the discussion should focus on, I'd like from this board to have a discussion on our scope of influence. To set our parameters as to, okay, I think we need to have a discussion on that. It's just, because I think, to our clientele, we're gonna have to justify why we're going upstream, to be blunt. You know, I get it. It's contributing to our problem. And we seem to be one of the driving forces to create some solutions. But I think we should all have a say in what that influence is. And I think we need to have that public discussion. So I'll put that on the agenda. And then the other thing is, I think out of that discussion, then should come a tacit approval of just how much we're going to contribute. And I think we need that discussion. The other thing that I would say is Tom sent out a while ago the engineering study that was done in 2014, I think. I just sent it to Tina Lee, so that's what I think it was done. So that's 10 years old, but I think we should all, number one, have that study, because that's what a lot of these discussions are, from the county and from, that's the basis of the discussions, go back to that. It's a really comprehensive study, and I think we should all have at least glanced through it. So either Tom, you could resend it to everybody, or I can do it, whatever, but I think you should look through that as a part of, for the next board meeting, so that it's pretty comprehensive, to be honest with you, and it talks, so then we're all coming from the same knowledge base, if that makes sense.
I don't have it because it was probably sent out before I was.
Right. But sometimes those things get lost in the mail.
Yeah. It's a really good report. But don't read it late at night.
Well, what I found interesting, because we, Tom and I had a meeting with Chase Cummings and the author of that study. And he was showing aerial views. You were talking about what's happened in the past. He pointed out where historically the channel for the river was. And his comment was, I would never buy property to build a house in these areas, because you could actually see the difference where that river has changed. And I want to say, like, 25 acres away.
Yeah,
That-
short circuited and it used to make this huge horseshoe.
Right.
Just down from that, I believe. I'd have
Yeah.
to look, but it just took a straight path.
And I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, and
anyway,
you can look at the Hay River too, and you can see that it's changed directions so often. It's created all these little, what they call oxbow lakes. And like what you were talking about with, we're not talking about like the Hay River type stuff. And I think the Hay River, it's like death by 1,000 cuts. There's like just a gazillion little areas that contribute to that sedimentation there. Whereas Red Cedar's got those bigger, more powerful ones that are drifting off down. Whereas I think the Hay, because it's smaller and it meanders a little bit more, it's harder to pinpoint any one contributor.
okay, let me see, Adam, aquatic vegetation,
Nothing. We just plan to have a meeting late January. We don't have a date set.
okay,
That's about it.
all right, water quality,
We had our first meeting on Monday, December 2nd at Tainter Town Hall. We mainly worked on operations items, getting set up, lists of phone numbers, emails. Members have Gmail accounts so we can park our projects and important paperwork in G Drive like we did in the weed committee. Next meeting, Monday, January 13th. And I talked to Chase Cummings, like Dan Zer suggested, because I'm interested in doing something with the farmers groups kind of right away. And he sent me over to Tina Barone, who's a conservation planner for Dunn County Land and Conservation, and she specifically works with the farmers and the farmers groups. So she's coming to be our guest speaker on Monday, the 13th, and looking to get our foot in the door very carefully with the farmers and see where that goes. Also, I'm trying to get, we have 4 members, one at a time, just to do a short presentation on something to get them used to speaking and doing a little research. And Paul Colby, one of our members, volunteered to do a presentation on duckweed, one of our favorite subjects, especially this year. So I'm looking forward to that too. Talk to Doris, and we can use the Monster TV, the new Monster TV. And that's about it.
When's your next meeting, Chuck?
Monday, January 13th, 5:00.
That it? Grant?
Yeah, I did not send out the meeting notes, but we did have a meeting on December 10th for fundraising and community connections. Main purpose of it was to kind of talk through how we're gonna set up funds that people can donate to. So we came up with, like we talked about at last meeting, we'll create a fund for sedimentation, water quality, weed harvesting, boating and safety, and then a general fund. So there'll basically be 5 buckets. And that will allow people to donate specifically to, what do you, if you want to call it a passion project or whatever their specific interest is. And then we also talked about some annual fundraisers that we could do. Basically, we want to focus on either having 1 or 2 of them. And we're thinking that this spring, we're going to try to line something up that's more of a kind of appreciation night for everybody on the lake that already pays taxes and has come to the annual meetings. And we'll use that as, hopefully there will be some funds generated in that one, but it'll be just kind of a kickoff to this whole idea of private fundraising, how it works. Again, kind of describe the different buckets people can donate into, and just have some like literature available on how it works as a tax deduction, let's say. So people have a good, solid understanding of that. And those are the 2 main topics. I think we got a good start. We're having another meeting in January. And that pretty well covers it. Yeah, we should be able to, as long as we vote to pass the fund idea tonight, then we're all set up, like just pretty much waiting for the approval from the board, and we'll be able to take that stock transfer that's been offered to us before the first of the year. So we'll start it out and see what we can do after that.
Is Tim Maves on the committee?
Yeah, Tim Maves and Jane Pierzina, is that how you pronounce her last name? Yeah, so they've been 2 really helpful people. Jane's kind of like the party planner gal, so that's good to have. And
Gotta have somebody like that.
yeah, she's on it. She sent me a couple emails since the meeting about just different ideas and checklists of things to do. And then Tim has just been the guy who's kind of been around Tainter Lake forever and knows a lot of people and is really excited to help. So
Last but not least, the strategic planning. I had a Zoom meeting with Renee Kantz, who is our contact person at SEH. And she's going to be doing our technical review of our strategic plan. And we had a good discussion. The positive takeaway that I got from that meeting too was she was surprised at how much work we'd already done on that. From the community meetings, the data analysis and all of the discussions that we had. I think she was fearful that she was going to have to do a lot of that research work. Well, really, and we got that part covered. I would hope, and it may or may not happen, but I would hope that we would have a reviewed plan and update by the January board meeting so that you guys can get to see how that looks, but this project has been going on now for almost a year. I'd really like to get it off my desk and be done with it. And so that we can use it as a communication tool. Just so that you know, a lot of the structures and the directions that we're going are already in the plan and we're tentatively following the framework of the plan. There's just some more specifics in there. But then everybody on the board would get a chance to review it again and make any additions, corrections, or whatever to that. So, with that, if it doesn't happen by mid-January, she's gonna get it back to me. I don't know that there's enough turnaround by the time she gets it back to me to have a meeting to make the editorial editing and then get it to you guys, and so you can read through it in time. So it may be February, but, and I also applied for and got a extension on the grant because we were originally supposed to have that plan written by December. But because we couldn't find a consultant, which was a big piece of that, Alex Smith was more than happy to extend that. He said a year, and so they extended it for another year, but like I said, I want it off my plate by April. Let's put it this way, by the opening of fishing, I don't want to be talking about strategic planning. Okay, I want to be doing planning. So that's it for the reports on all the committees. Thank you. It sounds like we got a bunch of things going and in a bunch of different directions. So that's a good thing. Approval of I call it the savings plan for what's it, Wozniak and Heike Group and fundraising. I didn't know what the terminology was, but I just wanted to simplify it and go from there. So Grant, would you speak to that? And I would hope have a motion.
Yeah, it's a lot of what we talked about the last meeting. Basically being able to create funds that people can donate to and receive a tax deduction for that. And so, we'll go with, the 5 bucket approach, like I just talked about. Sedimentation, water quality, weed harvesting, boating and safety, and a general fund. Yeah, the accounts are relatively easy to sign up or create, so if we get influence to create another one for some reason, maybe it would be like stocking muskie fund or, some sort of habitat thing like that. We can always create another one, but I think starting with those 5 will be really, really good. With the idea of eventually working with Jim, hopefully to build a donations page right on our website, because that's how we can, when people go to donate, it'll take them to a page on the website and then it'll go into the accounts from there. So, yeah, I guess I'd like to make a motion to be able to officially set up those funds with Wozniak Heike. And those 5 specific areas will all be covered in those
It's a set up accounts, not funds, but accounts.
accounts to
It-
put funds into.
Right.
There we go.
Do we have to seed it?
No.
Sure.
Yep, not even like a savings account where you gotta put $5 in or whatever. Yeah, no, they just can set them up. And they'll be sitting there waiting and ready, and if we're successful in privately fundraising, then we'll have money in there. And if we're not, then we won't have any, and it'll be a little bit of a waste of time, but I think we gotta put the structure in place like that. I think you know, you guys have talked a lot about what you've learned from Green Lake, and I don't ever necessarily expect to have that kind of budget, but if the general concept of people being able to donate to something that they're specifically interested in, that really follows to me. And then, you know, Jerry, at the last meeting, you mentioned that, which organization was it? The
Community
The Community Foundation, yeah, they've got a really similar model to what we're proposing, and I'm not a reinvent the wheel type of person. Like if it works for another another group similar to us, then I basically just want to kind of follow that blueprint and see what we can do with it.
Hey Grant, I got a question. I know when the guy was here talking about the program last month, he said they charge us really a low rate, right?
They actually they're not taking any management fees on this because we're a local group, kind of like a community foundation or stepping stones or something like that, where they're doing it out of goodwill and probably as a little bit of a marketing tool for their business. I think it's a good light to shine on your business doing something like that.
Okay. So how do they make money on the account then by us putting money into those buckets and then they take and invest that, or how do they make money? I'm
They
just,
don't make anything off of our accounts.
wow.
They're doing it, like I said, it's a goodwill measure, and I think if you're a company like theirs, it's probably a pretty wise just marketing move to make. I'm guessing that, you know, they've noticed it in the past by being involved with other um, organizations kind of like ourselves, that it's probably they probably get phone calls from people who have noticed them and met them, and all of a sudden they're managing their retirement accounts or investments or what have you. So yeah,
Wow, can't beat that.
yeah, I think it's a pretty good deal. And then, like I say, the structure's in place, and then it's up to doing the work and having the success to fill those accounts, hopefully with money. So
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second. I'll
Well,
put you down, Jerry.
We'll let
Okay.
Jerry do it. There's been a motion, a second. Any further discussion?
The only thing I'd say from like our committee's perspective, there's a bunch of people that want to donate specifically for buoys. So I don't know if we need to segregate that into its own bucket or or if just being with the boating and safety committee is enough, but there are some people that have, because this was actually a discussion at Monday, was about having money that just goes just to buoys. So
yeah, you bring up a good point there. I think number one, when we receive a donation, one of the questions we're gonna ask on every single one of them is, what, do you have anything specific that you wanna do with it? Or do you want it to go into the general fund? So I do think a good discussion to have at a meeting in the next 2 or 3 months would be, so if somebody donates to the boating and safety and earmarks it for buoys, you know, we have that information. So does the boating and safety committee basically get to have a meeting and say, okay, this is how we're gonna spend the money in our bucket? And does the water clarity get to do that? Is that something that the entire board needs to be involved in? Like, to me, for something like that, it would be fairly simple. I would be comfortable just saying, okay, people donated, we know what they want out of it. Just let's spend the money on that. And then the other thing would be is if you got 5 people donating to buoys and it's more than what we need, then maybe it's a conversation of, okay, what else in the channel, probably, you know, those people are probably most interested in the channel. What are other things we could take that money and use it for? Do you want to do a rip-rap project, or I don't know what the idea would be, but yeah, we'll have good documentation on the front end of where they want it to go. And then I think that's up to us as a board probably to kind of write up the rules of what's the process to go and be able then to spend that money to accomplish what we
and
want.
we'll have to, and this was also a discussion, and because we are a quasi municipality, whatever the legal rules are about, like our discussion on Monday was, we can't have somebody that wants to donate to buy a buoy only if it's placed in front of their house and only if the
Yes.
if the no wake zone gets extended to their house. So there are certain pay to play type rules, and Al probably dealt with this in school district type of thing too, where there's donations and you can accept them up to, but there can't be like a specific.
Too many strings attached.
Yeah, or that, like with buoys, like somebody may say, well, my business wants to donate a buoy, but I want it to say, Homes by Julie, hanging from the side of the buoy, and because it's a legal waterway marker, it can't have anything on it. So we've talked about how we want to structure those donations. It's important to recognize people for those donations, but it's also important to make sure that they're not getting some sort of preferential treatment, like that buoy's gonna be right in front of your house, and it's gonna be in a spot where it's not supposed to be, that kind of thing.
Well, that's why I like the 5 buckets. They align with our committees
Right.
and and if they say, well, I want to buy a buoy with this, well, that's from this committee. And we put it in that committee because we don't do what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
As far as spending the money, yeah, it needs full board approval in my opinion. But
Well, and I think you can solve some of your problems and what I was, what you talked about at your committee meeting was to give people recognition at different levels of sponsorship. Like
An annual.
if, Wozniak and Heike, I think if they're giving us, if they're not charging a fee, they become a major sponsor of our district and we use their logo. Okay, if you donate, and Grant's group talked about different levels of donations. That if you give a buoy, then you become a platinum or a silver donor. And your name just goes on that, so you don't have, you're not gonna go on the buoy because you can't. But then that recognizes people's contribution, and that's on our webpage. And so then they get those kinds of recognition. And that's also the reason, Grant was talking about having a social event. So we can get people together and then have them stand up. And maybe we give out some cheaper plaques or whatever, in appreciation from us that, have, Jane, kind of work on that. I'm not a real good person for that, but that along those lines gets to how somebody can sponsor something. And we don't do specifics. We do general, but then here you're gonna be on our web page and those kinds of things.
The other really key, oh, I'm sorry to interrupt, Chuck. The other really key thing that what makes these donations tax deductible, because we're a special municipality and not a 501(c). There we go. I think C3, I almost had it memorized. Is that they're for public use. So I think that is another little bit there, like, yeah, you can't donate the buoy and just expect to put it right in front of your house just to protect only your property, like it technically has to be for public use. So we're going to put it in a place where it makes the most sense for everyone. So yeah, I think we're kicking the ball. We kicked the ball around some on just how to structure that, those tiers of donations and how to recognize them. I mean, I think we have a really great model that we can more or less copy in the Shatek model that he spoke of. And you go on their website, it's really professionally looking. You can click to donate on there. I mean, I think it's worked really good for them for a long time. And they have like a $1,500 tier and a $500 tier, and then a Friends of the Lake that's $125. So I would almost just use that exact same model. And then a lot of the top donors are more businesses or corporations in the area. Then as you go down in scale, then it's more just individuals, families, those kind of things, and so we need to draw all that up, and that's part of some of the literature we want to create for a meeting in the spring, so I can keep you guys updated as that progresses.
Hey, Jim, maybe I'm opening a can of worms here, but I remember seeing on Facebook where that, I know some of the private individuals bought their own buoys and put them out in front of their house. And I saw that someone was willing to donate it to your committee, but I didn't know if it was a legal buoy or if there were some strings attached here or.
Yeah, we've already talked about that. So they've been at a couple of meetings, and the impression I got is that they were willing to donate them if we extend the
Okay,
no wake zone to their property. But they also should never have been sold those, because it's not legal to put those in yourself. So,
that's what I.
so
kinda
I
thought.
mean, hopefully they get to donate it, and if it gets, if the, you know, if there's a lot of contingencies with extending a slow no wake zone, and if the DNR were to ultimately approve it to be wherever, I can't even remember where their place is, how far from the current slow no wake zone is, but I mean, if that's their stipulation, it's too bad they wasted all that money.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
yeah.
Okay, we have a motion, and did somebody second the motion? Jerry? Okay, there's been a motion, a second. Any other discussion? The motion is that we approve the savings plan with Wasnick and Heike Group and for fundraising. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of matching funds for countywide conservation intern. Tom, will you speak to this issue, please?
I can. At last month's Alliance meeting, the topic was discussed about Dunn County losing their conservation intern for 2025. They've had an intern for the last, I don't know how many years it's gone on, but last summer they had a really good one. And it was funded largely by some money that was left over from the TMLIA. And they still have some money, but they don't want to spend it all on one thing. So what they have asked of us and groups like us is if we would be willing to donate $250 toward this conservation intern. Good news is that we could use the conservation intern. So it wouldn't be just a donation. We'd get something out of it as well. So I'd like to bring it to your attention and get your thoughts on it.
So is it something like this intern could help with the Stewart property and those types of things? I mean, something along the lines of,
We can, I think we can determine whatever project we want him to work, him or her to work on, keeping in mind that not all interns are gonna have the same background.
yeah,
But I think our projects are diverse enough that we could find something meaningful for this person to do.
Sounds like a
Other,
great idea. Money well spent, pretty cheap.
Well, once again, what we've wanted to do is develop partnerships. And the Alliance is made up of 8 or 9 other groups like ours. And it would be a good partnership.
it builds goodwill with those other groups that we're pitching into.
Yeah, and
Yep.
as well as the county.
Yeah,
So
who would be the supervising entity of this intern?
Chase.
Chase? Okay.
Yep.
That's what I figured. Any
Yeah.
further discussion? Do I have a motion?
Would you like me to make a motion?
Whoever, doesn't matter.
I'll make a motion that the Lake District approve a $250 donation to our conservation intern.
Do I have a second?
Second,
Okay, choose whoever you want. There's plenty. There's been a motion and a second to approve the expenditure of $250 for a, I'll say, conservation intern. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Let me get back to my notes here. The discussion of the carp bounty program, by the way, we are now calling it the carp bounty program, not to be confused with a fishing tournament.
Right.
So that, we're trying to stay out of that whole, rigmarole of that, although, actually, and we talked about this, Casey was really excited about some of the stuff that we've done, or that we're doing. She's on board, so, and she also approves the permits. So the, I think that, there's a nice connection. It's nice to always ask, before we start going down the road and then having somebody put the brakes on what we're doing. I don't know if there's anything more because we did this report through the, communication, if there's anything more to add, to that whole discussion. We pretty much talked about it. I would imagine we're gonna have another meeting pretty soon. I will be contacting a person about setting up that program. It may include, some weekends. Or some time that we might have to sit at a boat landing and collect information. One of the things, and I don't know that you mentioned it, is we finalized the information that we wanted to collect from each of the fishermen. Or we want to know, how, we want to know how many fish they got, where they caught them, what time a day or whatever. And we can do some sizing so that when we approached Casey on this, is that our goal, and I told her right out, was our goal was to collect data on just how much carp is in that's one of the side benefits of this program, is to know just how big a carp issue we have. And what's gonna take place. Now, she didn't know how she was gonna use the data, but that's data that we're collecting, and it'll be useful information somewhere down the road. So that's about it for that whole program. So looking at somewhere between May and June, in the spawning, trying to get them in the spawning area.
And the work that Al described about, monitoring fish that come in, we can get lots of help on this. And if people sign up for one night, we don't want to sit, the seven of us don't want to sit out there 7 nights a week for 3 weeks straight. We can get some help on this.
Jim, I had heard earlier about a QR code and trail cam or some technology involved. Could we do like a Google form getting filled out from our website or link to our website or QR code so that people can enter data?
Yeah.
At the site, and I don't know, they can upload a photo?
yeah, could do that, potentially. Yeah.
I think some of the methods are gonna be determined by what this gentleman gives Al. He's put them on before,
Oh.
so he might have some more specifics
Idea,
on how
yeah.
to take care of this stuff.
Solutions to those.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and he runs those as tournaments, and that's bow fishing, or with bow and fishing for carp, and so that's what he runs. And so we're expanding that to say by any legal means. So if you want to spear them, if you want to net them, you know,
Couple of industrious people or a few industrious people could get some nets out and take care of a lot of carp in a short period of time.
I'm figuring I could figure out how to get our intern paid for.
Adam, do you remember? I remember you and I were talking and sometime when the carp were spawning up near the sandbar. And I don't remember when it was, early June? Do you,
Oh, yeah, they're out there from ice out to all summer, so they're lighting up my house like crazy. So,
And it'll depend on when the ice goes out and how much rain we get, how cold, fast the water gets warmed up and, all that stuff.
I would say there's a lot fewer boats in the last 3-4 years than there used to be. Like it used to be a lot.
Well,
busier out there.
If we can pay them for what they're doing, that
Right.
might mean that there's more out there. And, who knows, maybe it's just some people with musky rods and trying to snag some big carp. But anyway, I don't know that we need to spend more time on that. Anybody have anything else to add to that? I'm gonna,
Motion.
that, it was just a discussion.
Oh,
Just to inform the board of what's going on. The last agenda item, is the plan of work. I apologize. I sent that out this afternoon. This has been Lake District Week. I've had 3 meetings with 3 different groups this week, and to be honest with you, I just spaced it out. And today, I realized I had not sent anything out on today's agenda, so, a couple of things I would like to add on the plan of work. I went through and we're cruising through this. Couple questions I have, is Adam, you're figuring on writing a surface water grant for the funding for the study? Is that correct? Are you planning on doing that?
This is for the
Aquatic,
vegetation.
right? But it's a surface water grant. That's the funding agency that's the DNR funding.
Yeah, I know we were talking about the experimental mechanical permit. Doing that. So that we don't have to do. Aquatic plant management is doing that. You're talking about the
Plant management, the management.
aquatic. Sorry, what's it called?
It's the bigger plan,
Right,
The management.
aquatic vegetation plan. Does
right?
that sound right?
Right.
So,
I mean, there's grant money out there for that.
yeah, yeah, we can do that. I don't know how much we need to
What you
do
need
for that.
what I would recommend is this. I would sit down with, Alex Smith
Mhm.
and ask him what the expectation is of that, because, talking to, Casey, or, not Casey, but, Renee Ants, she did Chatex.
Yeah, which is very extensive.
Right, but the DNR made them write a management plan for 6 lakes,
Right.
because they have 6 lakes in their body of water. So that's why it's so extensive and what I would suggest that you do, and I know what the companies are telling you, I would suggest that you connect with Alex, sit down with Alex and say, okay, how extensive does this plan have to be? And the other thing that we can do too is we can write 2 grants. one for upper and then one for lower Tainter and then combine them for one plant. So in other words, it all depends what they make you do. And so I would research that just as,
Yeah, and I did have a pretty extensive conversation with Tyler Meesalk about what's expected of that.
if he's, whoever's
Yeah.
in the approval process or whoever's gonna get the project further down the road, that's who I would talk with.
Yeah.
Is what their expectations are. Not that you want to do the minimum,
Right.
but it is, you want it to be able to stand up. And the other thing is if they're going to make us write, a management plan somewhere down the road, we'd want to have the aquatic plan done properly so that it would dovetail with that other bigger plan. And so we wouldn't have to rewrite it twice.
Right, so that falls basically underneath the, what's the bigger plan?
The lake
Lake
management plan.
management plan. yeah.
Right. So that would be a subcomponent of
But
that.
basically that surface water grant with the DNR, yeah, I can look into that. I have had conversation with Tyler about kind of what their expectation would be. And then also talked with aquatic plant management about what cause they see that document too with a lot of
Right.
different lake districts, and it's on a lot of sites. I've looked
Right.
at quite a few of
If
them,
you're,
so-
if you're Cedar Lake and 300 acres and an impound or just a spring-fed lake, that's
Yeah.
going to be different than what they're going to expect from us. So
Right,
I would, just as a suggestion,
Yeah.
I would start there and then go from there. So
and
that's,
it's really variable on what you're doing for plant management too, if you're just harvesting versus,
right.
chemicals and all that other
Right,
stuff, so there's a lot of
exactly.
variables there, so.
Okay.
Al, I think Tyler's closer, works out of Eau Claire, and he's more than willing to work with us. Not saying anything about Alex, but I think he'd be the guy to go with. Don't you agree, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, he seems very, approachable, and like you can call, I have a cell phone number, and if I call his cell phone, he answers the phone. So, I mean, he emailed us his cell phone number and I've talked to him 3 times, so that's.
Whoever we can get the most juice from is the way I would go for it.
That's Tyler.
So, the one thing, I was gonna ask, on the replacement buoys and things like that. Do we have a plan? And are we gonna get them through Donkey Docks or is that anywhere on?
That's our plan is, basically it's on a schedule. We're gonna start off with like 2, isn't it right, Bob? And then plan is to do like 1 per year. And if that can be offset by like a donation, then great. If somebody does donate for a bunch of buoys, I mean, those buoys are really old. Then it may turn out that we have to replace them quicker than, rolling through every year because once we have that ordinance, we're responsible for the buoys.
Right.
So if somebody takes a big wake boat and, runs one over and pulverizes it, well, that's one that's gonna have to be replaced sooner than
Right.
the schedule would allow, so.
Well, I guess I'm just kind of looking at it from the standpoint of, as soon as you know when it's time to pull the trigger to order them and get them done and to get that whole thing.
Yeah, and one of the things that our committee is working on, and Bob's a big part of that, is kind of like a vendor agreement with even just the removal and storage of the buoys and how that process is going to work. We're not just going to say, well, here you go, here's the check and off you go. We want to make an inspection, make sure that, the buoys have been stored properly, that that they're cared for and all of that process. And Bob's very meticulous and has done a great job so far with that process. And so, I don't know if we've actually talked about the purchase or having a process for that. That's kind of less complicated. It's basically as long as those buoys meet our requirements as far as like the parts that go with it, like the chain, the size, lights, those types of things on it, the weight, because that's a really important part of it. That's less important as far as, except for as far as like compared to the procedure
Right.
for storage, removal, placement, how they are placed, time when they are placed, all of that stuff. Because the new ordinance will not have dates in it any longer as far as when they are, when it starts and when it stops. So, so that's gonna be driven more by who that vendor is. And, right now, that's Donkey Docs, but they, it might be another company later on, or he may decide to
Right.
move on or whatever.
Right.
So we wanna have that procedure in place going forward.
Okay. I'm just saying from a purchasing standpoint, and especially if you have to assemble them and those kinds of things, that this time of year would be a better time to do it than when he's putting in docks and in the spring of the year. I'm just giving him some lead time. That's all. I'm bringing it out and just to talk about it. I'll trust you guys to.
Bob, make a mental note that that'll be on our next meeting agenda.
Just move that along. The other thing that I have on that is that the email marketing platform, I think I inadvertently sent it wasn't my intention to send a test to all of you, but it went to info, so I think you all got it. But it's 90% ready. Jim and I had a brief conversation yesterday. I have a couple of different layouts that I put together. One of the things I want to do next is have a form to put on the webpage so that they could ask to subscribe. And
Should be built into the platform.
right, it is.
Yeah.
I just have to put it together and then you and I have to connect it to the website. But then we're kind of ready to go. I have a list. My wife has put that list on a spreadsheet so I can import that whole thing. But it's the list, I think it's the list that we collected at the last annual meeting. It was on green paper, engineering paper. She went through it. Some printing was more legible than others, but I haven't done a test broadcast of the whole list yet. I'm waiting to get everything done, and that'll be the last thing that we do on that. So that's coming along. And at that point, if there's anybody else that would like to help me write stuff, I'd really appreciate it. And we can get together sometime and talk about kind of the format. Jim has given me some suggestions. And Jim, if we had some pictures too, I want to make it so that it just isn't blah, 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 here's what happened. I'd like to have some pictures and to spark some interest. So thank you for that. Anybody else wants to be a contributor? And I may be coming to some of you to say, Adam, I need a paragraph about what you're doing with harvesting and what are the dates and just little things like that we can constantly be sending out. My goal is at least once a month. No, ideally, I think if we did it twice a month, if we had some email broadcast. We could obviously have one just on the agenda, or, putting out the agenda. But, I want it to be more than that. And I wanted, if there's, related articles or URLs to attach there that people can, now, will they look at them or whatever? I don't know, but at least we can say that we're putting out information. And, the other thing is, Grant's already got a stock contribution, ready, to go. And so we're cruising along on some of those things. So, I know you guys might look at some of this being tedious work on every time I talk about the plan of work, but we got a lot of moving parts with a lot of volunteers. And if we screw up, it's gonna be because we forgot something, not because we did anything nefarious or wrong. It's because, oops, we forgot to do something. So I put that out there so that you can look at that. And the other thing is, one of the things that are on, if you notice how I've written this, there's 3 president's goal. Those are my goals. And those are the front parts, and that has to deal with organizational challenges, opportunities, education, and strategic planning. Those are from a leadership role. Those are what I'm going to be focusing on. And then that's a little bit different than the committee structure and how that works. So you should know what I'm up to all the time by just looking at that. The other thing I will say is the Lakes and Rivers Convention, the registration, I believe, is open for that. And that is a very worthwhile thing to go to. And there is some money in the budget for that, but if you can, March 26th through the 28th, if you can, they used to have a day registration. They don't have like a single day anymore. But I would encourage anybody that wants to go to that, and because you get a very good statewide perspective.
I think the Red Cedar Watershed Conference is also just opened up for registration as well. So.
And one of my goals too on that is to get representation from this board on that board. So, to help, because I think they could do a component on that with lake districts and associations. That I think that would start to pull some of those things together. But that's somewhere down the road. That's just a pipe dream of mine. And I don't really want to be the representative. I have 6 other friendly faces here that I think do a wonderful job. The last thing I'm going to say is we have 7 meetings left until the annual meeting. Just what a friend of mine I met for lunch the other day, and he says that life's like a roll of toilet paper. The closer you get to the end, the faster it goes. So on that note, I will entertain a motion to, agenda planning, excuse me. I put down the Stewart Property and Engineering Study for an agenda item. Does anybody have any other agenda items that they would like to put on for February? Or that our discussion today generated?
Will we be updating the CARP program with probably another meeting then, Al and Tom, or,
Sure,
okay,
I love meetings.
yeah.
We get-
I'm starting to get this now, but it takes a while for it to kind of sink in, for me anyhow. I think Tom's got a good handle on it. Yeah, you do.
Is getting a donation page as part of our website, is that something we need to have as an agenda meeting, or is that something we can just start working on if Jim is the website administrator?
I think we already voted to approve going forward with it, so now it's just work on it, so.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
I don't know that we need, we've
Yeah, I
had
don't
enough
want to if we
discussion.
don't have to. I'd rather
Right.
just get going, but
Right. No, I would say that we're all in consensus that we should have a donor page. And I would look to you setting up the categories or
Yep.
kind of what that works like, because that's your committee. And you can advise Jim as to how that, or have input to Jim as to
yeah, I'm
how to,
probably will email the link to Shatek's donation page and we'll say,
Just look at
do about
Shatek's.
the same thing.
and they have a nice. And then,
Raise a
well,
lot
the
of
one
money.
thing that I think that we can do though too, is, especially I think when we get some things done, is that major donor sponsor, we should probably have a discussion on that.
Yep.
Um,
I can lay out yeah, proposal. There we go. It's a good word for it.
all right.
And just, we'll probably talk about that at our next, fundraising meeting to
Well,
get that all.
And the reason why I say that proposal is if, let's say, the financial people, they're putting in kind, not a dollar amount. So if you put a dollar amount, I don't want somebody that says, well, I gave $1,500 and these guys haven't given anything.
Yeah,
I just want us to be able to say, yeah, I agree with that, or whatever, that
Sure.
we're all in line with that. All right? I don't hear any other agenda items. If you think of anything, shoot me an email. All right? Motion to adjourn?
We can talk about that fish that I caught in October.
hey, there we go.
29 inches
Oh, yeah.
and just over 9 pounds.
I'll
Yeah,
make
it's
a
a
motion,
monster.
Al.
Motion to, motions to adjourn, second?
Second.
Motion second, we are adjourned.
All in favor?
Don't really have to vote on it, if you got the motion, but yes, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Sure.
I can show